So, welcome. It's great to see everyone here on a Thursday in mid-April. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sponsorship 101. We're really glad that you can be here. My name is Liz Atfield, and I'm the Vice President of Fundraising Strategy here at ST. And on behalf of the team, I'm pleased to welcome you to the second session in our webinar series. Today's session is focused on sponsorship fundraising in Canada and where it is right now. I'm sure many of you know that sponsorship has become a lot more complex in recent years. For example, expectations around activations are higher. Sponsors are looking for clearer ROI and strong services, and stewardship matters more than ever. Just like it does to your donors, it matters to your sponsors as well. So today's webinar is really about taking a step back and understanding what sponsors actually value and how you can go away and build partnerships that go well beyond sharing their logos and sharing their name about in your communications material. So we're delighted to have Craig Sharma back, who will be leading us in today's session. And Craig, I haven't known Craig for too long, but I have to say over the past couple of years, I'm super impressed with Craig and his knowledge of all things peer-to-peer and sponsorship. Craig, from my perspective, brings highly practical experience for working with nonprofits and their sponsors, and is especially known for helping organizations move towards more meaningful sponsorship partnerships. So whether you are building up a sponsorship program for your not-for-profit or you want to refine what you already have, you're for sure in the right place today. And Stephen Thomas, of course, is happy to help you with all of your sponsorship needs. So after the webinar, feel free to reach out to ST, me, or of course to Craig, who's the expert in his own rights, and we are happy to help you. And this webinar will be recorded, and we'll circulate the link after today's session, and you can share it with your colleagues who were unable to attend. So welcome, Craig. Thanks so much, and I will hand it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Liz, and for the kind words. I appreciate it. And welcome to everyone. I'm excited about today's session. I had a blast last week. I really enjoyed some of the kind of like the chat comments and questions and just in general having a conversation around peer-to-peer fundraising and the trends there. And really excited about talking today about sponsorship in particular. And so with that, I will share my screen, get our presentation off and running. And we should be good. All right. So for today, really wanted to kind of like spend some time sharing some insights based off of the 19th annual Canadian Sponsorship Landscape Study. There's a real opportunity for charities that are ready to evolve. Total sponsorship investment in Canada reached over 4.2 billion, which is crazy. That's the highest level on record. It was driven by strong growth in rights fees, and there was sustained spend on activation investment. There was a significant increased focus on evaluation and ROI. These are all things that Liz kind of mentioned in the intro there. So for us in the charitable space, that's good news. It's a clear signal. Sponsors are spending more, but they are also expecting more. The organizations that are going to win, especially in the charitable space, are those that understand how sponsorship decision making has changed and to adapt their approach accordingly. So today we're going to talk about some of the key takeaways from the report, from the market, some other market research that was done last year, and then really look at this from a charitable lens. Obviously, that the the Canadian sponsorship landscape study kind of spans everything from a sponsorship perspective. So we'll look at the insights from a charitable lens and then how nonprofits can leverage those insights to strengthen their sponsorship opportunities and revenue. And so with that, kind of as there we go. Um, just like we kind of did last week, there will be different, chat opportunities, a couple polls, things like that, as we go through it. And as we did last week too, feel free to drop your questions along the way into the chat, and Liz will be able to grab them for me and call them out. But we can have some discussion points along the way. And I really just want to kind of share, well, actually, two things as I share like what I'm hoping for today. I'll put my first kind of comment into the chat here is about like what are you hoping to get out of today's session? For me, I think of there's such a big opportunity for sponsorship within our industry, and I kind of made some tweaks to the original kind of like presentation that I thought about giving. Because I want this to be a combination of educational, but also executional from an information perspective. And I'm hoping that you can walk away today with something that, is you feel is valuable both for learning, but also for implementation. So with that, kind of we'll cover off how sponsorships evolved, especially recently, and what sponsors want. I think that's like kind of a big component of that. Sponsorship is growing. We're going to talk about that, what that looks like. And then a couple key components that are definitely that relate to us on a day-to-day basis from a sponsorship sales and delivery perspective, which is activation, cause sponsorship. And then we'll wrap things up with the big opportunities and cover off any questions. Um, but like this kind of looking at the chat, I love this like the opportunities, the best opportunities, tips, and not even getting board engagement, and understanding what sponsors want, all great stuff, and looking forward to hopefully covering all that in the webinar today. So the evolving world of sponsorship, kind of like what we want to know right now with what's going on. I mean, there's some kind of key components here. Brands are shifting from transactional sponsorships to experiences that create emotional connections and aligning with overall brand strategies. And so that's the evolution that we're seeing in the industry for sponsorship, and we want to be able to kind of like understand that, match that. So these really they're looking for those emotional connections. They want to engage, create neat experiences, and then have it match or kind of like line back to the overall brand strategies. Um, the activation piece, this is big. This is, spending has reached parity with rights fees. So that speaks highly to like how important activation is. It's highlighting the need to really create those engaging experiential activations, things like hosting, like branded content, promotions. All of that is a very valuable element now for sponsorship and what brands are looking for. Measurement, super important. ROI is a key concern. It has been for years. It's always been something that's been a bit of a challenge within the sponsorship world. But it's becoming more and more important. It's emphasizing the importance of putting evaluation methods in place to secure or to retain sponsors. Servicing. I mean, I think this kind of goes without question. And as folks in the charitable space, we understand how stewardship is a key component of everything that we do. But prioritizing sponsor support and tailoring those activations can serve as a significant differentiator in a very competitive landscape. So something that we want to definitely keep top of mind. And then the innovative partnerships. There's this kind of like arena thinking. That big venue with lots of different elements that kind of draw your attention. If you think about going to a sporting event, that kind of style of sponsorship, it encourages partnerships beyond traditional categories. And it doesn't have to be in a sporting environment. There's many of those kind of assets that we can offer or provide that still creates that same kind of feeling of being with a bunch of different people all in having a similar experience and being exposed to um, brands and activations in different ways. But that's what kind of like helps motivate um, brands as well as looking at innovative ways of partnering. When we think about what sponsors want, and there was a comment in the chat about this. I really want to spend a couple minutes here. This was something that I added from my original draft from a slide and from a flow for the webinar, because it's really important, and I feel it's often an overlooked element of sponsorship within the charity space. So understanding what sponsors want, what the primary drivers of ROI are, provides a competitive advantage. Excuse me, especially as brands are becoming more sophisticated, like we've been hearing. Um, so when you think about what sponsors want, there's kind of like five main trends that we've seen and heard for the last several years coming out of the study. Sponsors want to connect with events that have a strong, respected reputation to boost their own credibility. That's an important kind of component when you think about what we offer in the charitable space to brands. You know, the credibility component is a big element that we definitely can deliver on. Um, a great sponsorship helps both the event and sponsor share a story that excites, motivates, inspires people. We know that sponsorship is a key component of marketing plans quite often. And so being able to tell a meaningful story that excites people or gets them inspired is super important. And they want to involve their audience. So sponsors are looking for ways to engage their customers. Sometimes it can be employees, it can be other key groups or audiences for them through the event. So they that's a big element too, especially when you think about what we spoke. Kind of the one of the key takeaways from the webinar last week was corporations or companies in general looking at ways to engage their employees. Again, events and sponsorships are a great way for them to do that and important to employees as well. And then sponsors are expect to see how their involvement benefits their business. Obviously, they're looking for ROI. So whether that's things like audience reach, whether it's sales or brand recognition, obviously this is a big component of what they're looking for. And then lastly, it's about gaining visibility. They want to be able to stand out they want their teams to be successful. So helping them grow their impact and their reputation is wonderful. And then on this slide, I added just this kind of it's essentially a tool that I've used over time myself, where you've got like on that left side, you have like your drivers of ROI. And I think there's seven listed there, seven or eight. These are the historically in the study that's been going on for almost 20 years now. These are the primary drivers of ROI as shared by brands themselves. And so knowing that these are, the number one kind of changes from one year to the next or two or three or whatever it is, but they all kind of like rank quite high. They're definitely the ones that are repeatedly in the top 10. So I have them just kind of listed down the side, and then, right next to it, it's, what event or property that do I have within my organization that can deliver on this? And when, maybe there's only one event or property, it's what exactly about my event would allow someone to, have this activation opportunity or leverage this asset. And I would write it down so that I know that when I'm having conversations with sponsors, I'm able to deliver on one of the primary drivers of ROI. And in an ideal world, you're able to kind of list out something against each one of those drivers. But a great resource to kind of have a really good exercise to go through when you think about your sponsorship. Um, and the offerings that you present, and it's really having a good handle on the assets that you own so that you're able to kind of share that out when you're having conversations with prospective sponsors or even looking to retain existing ones. So, like we heard in the beginning there, sponsorship's growing. There's a but. It's also becoming increasingly sophisticated. And so, sponsorship rights fees grew by 58%, which is huge. Brands are entering an optimization era where they're focused on effectiveness, and not just exposure. And like the money spent on evaluation has quadrupled, and it's at its highest level in the history of the study as well. So, yes, the sponsorship dollars are growing, but so is the evaluation kind of element, and so is that like trying to optimize the dollars that are being spent. And it's not just about exposure. It's not just about a brand or a logo placed on a website or on a t-shirt or whatever it may be. And so they're not sponsors aren't just looking to buy goodwill alone. They're looking at a number of different kind of components and really like it's that ROI or measurable income outcomes. It's around business objectives and making sure that they're aligned, and it's having confidence that the partnership will be activated. So for us, what that means for charities, we're really looking to kind of go beyond those, like I said, go beyond the logo packages. So to better align with business objectives, we really need to build ownable assets or themes and give a really good option or yeah, options within our sponsorship packages. Um, and I'm curious here, we can like do our first poll for a moment. And when you think about what you offer today in your sponsorship decks or proposals, you have that kind of like grid model, which is the gold, silver, bronze model. Um, is that what you use? Or do you have a different way? So love to hear kind of like if who's using that gold, silver, bronze model in their sponsorship proposals.
Hey, Craig. So it's neck and neck. People are responding and saying it depends on the event. Right now,
Hmm.
yes is up by 58%, but it's close. No, and I'm not sure are coming in around 20% each from
Okay.
the poll. Yeah, so quite interesting. It's
Yeah, I mean, like it's not a surprise, for sure. I mean, it's the that kind of gold, silver, bronze model is yeah, I mean it's so the yes is definitely we're top for sure.
yeah.
I'm not sure for is yeah, quite a bit, and then some no's. Um, so thank you for that. I mean, like it's where sponsorship is going, is kind of forcing us to kind of reevaluate that model, and there's elements of it that work for sure. There's no question. Because I mean, having that gold, silver, bronze model that it's kind of like a chart does articulate some of the ways or the benefits that sponsors are going to get depending on how much they're spending. Um, but the industry is moving towards more of those like custom pitch decks. It's that how do we create themes, ownable assets, opportunities for sponsors to really kind of co-create essentially what their sponsorship looks like. And then really being able to kind of articulate what success could look like for them. And we're going to get into kind of like now, basically, as we move into some of these next couple slides, we'll talk a little bit more about what that could look like and what it means for us in the industry.
Craig, before you continue on,
Hmm.
there was a question from Megan asks if you could define sponsorship rights.
Yeah, for sure. So when we talk about rights fees, that's just like the actual like sponsorship itself. So it's writing the contracts where they have the ability, it's a terminology used within the sponsorship industry about uh partnering up with an organization or with a property. And so they with that comes kind of like the rights of being able to promote the fact that they are tied to an event or an organization, and leverage that into their own kind of communications and marketing.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good
And then
question.
there
Thank
was
you.
there was
Oh,
one other, sorry, there was one other question just about getting the study results. Is there a way for people? Will we share those?
Um, yeah, I will. Actually, it's not in here, but I will when we wrap up the webinar, I will find the link and I'll include it in the thank you email out because we have I'll have a couple things to send to everyone anyway that
Perfect.
attended today, and I'll put a link in so that you can get the report itself.
Okay. Okay. Actually, it's in the chat. I missed it.
Oh,
Okay. So that's great.
wonderful.
But we
Thank
can
you.
send it anyway. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay. I always want to do that and then I get stuck. There we go. Activation. So we'll spend a couple of minutes here talking about activation. It's activation drives results. That's kind of like a big takeaway here. So brands have invested. This is like these are crazy numbers when I hear them, but it's uh what we've learned out of the study is that brands have invested over 1.6 billion in sponsorship activation. And these are all self-reported numbers, as are kind of like the actual like sponsorship itself or the rights fees. Um, but what we're learning out of that, just with the dollars that they're reporting back, is that activation is driving results. And, if activation and ROI are strongly correlated, um, some of the effective tactics, just again to kind of call those back out, it's things like branded content, it's product sampling, there's co-promotions, hospitality and experiential engagement. Those are the kind of things that really, really matter to sponsors and are a big part of activations or how they actually bring their sponsorship to life. Um, and I think of it from that like win-win-win scenario. So when a brand is sponsoring a property, they want to be able to do something that engages people, and so when they're able to do that in a meaningful way, that's a win for the brand. It's a win for the charity when you think about hosting an event. So I've over the years I've been to many walks and runs and rides and run a few of those myself. And we'll one of the examples that I would call out that I just actually loved in this kind of like win-win-win scenario was an event, was the Ride for Heart. This goes back quite a ways. But the title sponsor at one time was a Unilever brand called Basel, and we're probably all familiar with it. And they were looking for ways to be able to activate and try to deliver, leveraging things like branded content, sampling, co-promotions, and things like that. And so the activation idea that and we ended up developing that was used in at the event for a couple of years was a corn roast. And so we had people that were going out riding their bikes. They were doing, like 50, hundreds or 50, 75 kilometers, things like that. They would come back and there was like a large area, festival style area where the different sponsors were set up. And as a charity, you're always looking to provide an excellent event experience. And after events like that, often there's the look for food and refreshments and things like that. And so how do you provide some variety in what you get other than maybe like waters and water, fruit, granola bars, things like that? So having a corn roast was definitely a little unique, and it was great for Basel because they could actually like do the corn. They could put the Basel on it, and then participants were able to come by and get it, and they also had something to eat. So from the base cell perspective, it was a win. From a participant's perspective, it was a win. And from the charity perspective, for us, kind of running the event, it was a win because it enhanced the overall event experience for our participants, which is what we're trying to do. And we want them leaving the event feeling fulfilled. We want them to leave feeling satisfied and happy. and that they had an enjoyable time and that they were supporting a great cause. Um, and an example like that really kind of like checks those boxes. It was product sampling, which is important. It was a strong activation, and it got people trying the product, which is maybe made the most meaningful kind of component of it from the sponsor perspective. So really, what this means for us is that sponsors want ideas. They want us to help create with kind of creative and credible activations. They want us to do what we can to support those desired outcomes for them. And so being proactive, we can host within our own teams or within our organization, we can have those activation thought starter brainstorming sessions. We can talk about our events. We can talk about the different properties we own, and what different activations could make sense for potential partners. We can look at, content creation. We can look at different ways to engage employees. We can come up with, consumer interactions and things like that, or even community partnership. But one of the takeaways too here really is to consider, it would be smart for us to assign internal ownership, so meaning as the charity to have someone responsible for owning sponsorship activation, not just the fulfillment report. So like working with our sponsors to kind of leverage the assets or come up with ideas, and co-create with them. Again, it just becomes a point of differentiation for us, and something that I feel that we're, as an industry, I think speaking about the charities, we're really good at stuff like that. And so let's leverage some of those strengths for our partners. Um, but a key component of that is understanding what the sponsor's actually after. So like what are they actually trying to deliver? What kind of ROI are they looking to drive? Because it could be branded content, which is very different from maybe someone that wants to do sales, and have sample products and then be able to have consumers buy things. So we'll take a moment here to kind of do our next poll. Do you have and do you use a discovery meeting worksheet for prospective sponsor calls, or even just having discovery questions so that you can understand what the needs of your existing or potential sponsors are?
Well, a lot of no's, 75, 77% no, a handful of I'm not sure's, about 20% yes. So generally no is what there's still a few more trickling in here, Craig.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's evened out a little bit. Still 67 to 28, 29%. No.
great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for sure, for those that are doing it, a kudos to you for having something structured like that. There are definitely ways to be able to understand it. I would say just from experience, definitely give some consideration to creating some kind of at least a list of questions so you have, you can really try to understand what their drivers would be from sponsoring, aside from the cause kind of component to it. It helps with even getting brands in for multi-year contracts, knowing that if you're able to deliver against business outcomes for them, but understanding them in the first place is super helpful for sure. So thank you again for sharing, and kudos for those that have got some already.
There's a question
Yeah.
from Samantha in the Q&A, which is, have you ever seen a sponsorship activation at an event where you allowed the sponsor to sell products? For example, if they are retail peer-to-peer based business model.
So yes, yeah, have definitely seen it on what I'd say like kind of like what you can consider mass events. So where there's a large volume of people that are there. Have seen it. It's not as common, definitely not as common in the charitable space. Way more common in the for-profit side. So something you definitely would see at concerts, festivals, sporting events, things like that. Um, and so they call them like within the industry there's like interceptors, so there's you're probably most familiar with it from credit cards. Where you'd be wandering around a grocery store or a sporting event and someone stops you and asks you about getting the credit card. But absolutely it's something that happens in the space. Not so much for within the charitable space. And mostly I would say it's because of the volume of people that are typically at our events. But it has happened for sure. I have seen it where there's sponsors set up a booth and there's an opportunity for people to walk away with having purchased something on site. But again, predominantly it is more of the actual sampling and some kind of walkaway coupon offer where they can then go to a store and be able to get the item. The other kind of component to it is often this is where it's kind of like a great question to lead into this next slide, actually, is sometimes it is actually done through like this cause marketing, where a brand is in and a percentage of sales or some kind of like upfront donation is made and then some additional opportunities to drive revenue for the charity through sale of product is a big thing. And so you can see activations on site at event day that are kind of tied to that as well. So you'd have brands, companies that are selling a product in support of a charitable organization. And so, like, I've actually just got an example up of one where Mondelez were this was back in 2024 actually. Felt like it was just last year, but it was a couple years ago. But Mondelez, who does like Sour Patch Kids and Cadbury chocolate and stuff like that in Canada, Oreos. They made a donation to KMH. They were looking to support youth mental health, and they actually did some on-pack advertising and things like that as well. And it ultimately like kind of their campaign culminated in an exclusive Johnny Orlando concert experience, and that was in Toronto. Um, but there's one of the ways that partnership would evolve was through a portion of sales, would also kind of go back to CAMH and things like that. Um, and but there's like brands are looking for those kind of engagements. They want to sell product 100%, but they also want to make sure that they are kind of supporting the causes as well. And it's a big market. Like if thinking about marketing, it's accounted for over 335 million. Um, so that's a big number when you think about that for us. Um, and the other component, the nice thing about, why this is so meaningful for us as sponsorship again is evolving. Sports is always at the top. Pro sport in particular is like a massive piece of the sponsorship pie, but brands are really diversifying their portfolios and they're going beyond pro sports. They're going beyond festivals. They're kind of returning back to something from about, like 10 years ago or so. Are those values driven investments? They're really looking to give back. It's a primary motivation for employees working at a company, and it's a great way to engage with the community in a meaningful way. And they want to be tied back to charities, especially where there's like that genuine or authentic connection to um their kind of like brand priorities, and culture, and tying it into charity organizations as well. And so again, for us, there's an opportunity to just really position ourselves as strategic partners and not just like a beneficiary of, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. We appreciate that 50K or whatever it is, but that we're working with them as a strategic partner. And it creates that relationship the same way we would cultivate a donor. over years and looking at that lifetime value of a donor and how we want to maybe move them from being an event participant or an event donor to eventually leaving a legacy gift or a major gift or something like that. Being able to have brands in as a partner for years is a tremendous asset and something that can really help drive the impact that we're trying to do with our respective missions. But it's important to kind of like also to define our like your role, your unique role really in the community. Or if it's like, if it's a topic or issue in that space and why you're that, you know, the maybe the ideal strategic partner for them. And you want to be able to demonstrate how you can help a brand achieve like that community credibility, employee pride and participation, and meaningful storytelling beyond just advertising itself. And I'll take a pause again for a second, just let you guys throw some stuff into the chat. If there's any cause partnerships that you've either executed yourself or that you're really proud of, or really good ones that you've just seen in the industry. Because I mean, again, part of the benefit of having the call like this and using the chat in this way is your ideas or things that you've done or things that you've seen could spark ideas for others that are on the call, and may give an idea on a potential brand to partner with or something to do in the marketplace. So we're getting close to kind of wrapping up here and really want to kind of come back to this, the big opportunity for charities. The sponsorship market is growing, cause is relevant again, brands are investing, but they're also demanding clarity, creativity, and confidence. And so I think it's really like there's an opportunity for us here to think more like a for-profit, act with purpose, be confident in what we offer to brands. And I think there's positioning ourselves as that strategic partner is this is the time we can capitalize on it for sure. Um, Designing sponsorships for activation, not just recognition. We spent a lot of time today talking about activation. It is a huge component. Um, Doing what we can to help enhance that is incredibly important. And again, I highly recommend doing some of those brainstorming sessions internally, um, and coming up with ideas, activation thought starters that you can share with some of your existing sponsors, or even with prospective ones when you're having those conversations. Use the discovery meeting to understand what's important to them, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish and achieve with their marketing plans, with their sponsorship dollars from a business objective perspective. You can leverage that into different ideas for activation. Um, the third point here is audience matters. And here's the tough thing to say for us in the charitable space. The audience matters. Often it matters even more than our cause does. So for us, it's an exercise in not letting our ego get in the way. And it's not because I'm this amazing cause doing some incredible work. And while that's true, and while that will definitely weigh into to a sponsor coming on board, often the case is that the audience that you are presenting to them, your participants, your donors, or whatever it may be, is more important. And if you think, for those of you that attended last week, when we talked about peer-to-peer events and asking if you had, kind of certain demographics that you have defined as key participants and supporters, or if you had personas outlined, that information, knowing that demographical information is like super important to sponsors and is a big way of what they do. And it leads nicely into that next point about like measuring what matters and communicating it. But like having that kind of information, sponsors often have a number of different of these kind of like marketing metrics already in place, and they're after certain audiences that they want to either acquire because they're challenging for them, or they want to go deeper with those relationships. The more that we can kind of share and then help them measure, it's a big thing that we can offer and we can deliver on. And then lastly, it's about, treating sponsors as similar to how we treat our donors and our event participants. They're strategic partners for us. They're not donors. So while we want to treat them similarly, they definitely have, things that matter to them, and they also can help advance our cause. They can help amplify our messaging. They have a reach often far beyond what we have with ours. And so um, looking at them as a partner that can support our outcomes as well. But we want to make sure, obviously, that we're delivering on theirs. We want it to be that win-win scenario where they feel like they've got a strategic partner in us, and we feel like we have a strategic partner in them. And ultimately, I'd say like the organizations that embrace this shift aren't going to just kind of survive in this competitive landscape, but they're going to be able to thrive. They're going to be able to lead it. And I look forward to seeing many of the kind of the brand, the charities, the causes that are on our call today, and accomplishing some of that, and making a splash in the sponsorship space. It would be exciting to see more and more of our charities getting some of those big brands to support and participate. So on that, I'll close up before we kind of go, like, move off into any other questions that might come up. Just with it's with a bit of a plug, which I don't normally do, but it's, I want to highlight a couple things that really could help, that could really help any of you, potentially all of you on the call. But things like, services like sponsorship theory outlines and designs, it's really around like designing those packages and following a lot of those best practice guidelines. Looking at doing like a sponsorship success review where it really does a deeper dive into the different kind of components of your sponsorship offering and assets, and providing like a score against that. Doing almost like a green, yellow, red exercise, because there are some definite benchmarks that we could be working towards. And would allow you to maybe like focus in on the things that are opportunities as opposed to the things that you're already doing really well. There's also a what sponsors want value proposition review. So looking at from a sponsor's perspective, there's definitely a funnel of kind of getting someone from like just a general awareness right through to actually like an engaged, bought in consumer, and kind of like where we kind of deliver on value against those different components within the funnel for them. And then this one is kind of it's funny how this has kind of evolved over the years, but ultimately it's a 10 missteps that nonprofits often make within sponsorship, and just having a little workshop around that to kind of like identify, maybe you could self-identify then some of the missteps that may be made over time or in any given year, and again to be able to work on those. But ultimately, after today, again, if there are, um, if the presentation today or the conversation and things like that, um, we're going to send out a similar to what we did with the peer-to-peer fundraising one, but got a comprehensive sponsorship readiness checklist. Again, it'll do that initial green, yellow, red scoring for you. That will get sent out with part of the wrap up, and thank you for attending today. But if between that or anything that we discussed today has kind of exposed any gaps or friction points in your sponsorship offering, or if you just want to learn more in general, please don't hesitate to reach out. I've got my email there, and Eugene's from Stella, who works on peer-to-peer fundraising and that as well through the digital side. Um, our email addresses are there, and feel free to reach out. But thank you so much for attending. I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time today to sit and to review sponsorship with. with me today and to kind of like go through this. I hope it's delivered on some of your expectations and provided some actionable insights, but also some educational components for you. But I will kind of pause for a minute. I'll stop sharing and we can get into any questions.
There are questions, and I was asked to join, be on screen, so I'm not just the voice from the abyss. So there's a great question here from Samantha. So the question is it customary to include a metric measurement in a sponsorship agreement so we can get measurable data on the effectiveness of the partnership from these sponsors? Great question.
That is a great question. Now that is something that is not done that I haven't for me personally haven't come across. But I love the idea for sure. That is definitely something to look at is how do we actually evaluate that sponsorship? And often all I've really seen is like it's the dollars coming in, and then it's that, did they help enhance the event experience? But not actually having something articulated in the contract itself, really just in post-event measurement and in the fulfillment reports.
Yeah,
Great thought. Great
great
thought.
thought. Okay, and there's one other in the chat, which is, do you have any advice on how to price out sponsorship, especially if they're customized?
Um, yeah. So there is how to answer this easily. So over my career, I've got a kind of like a couple different elements that are weighted and kind of it's essentially like a little formula to determine what that could be. But I would say maybe more simply, it's kind of looking at the assets that you're providing, and putting a value against them. So typically like a logo. So here's the example. So like a logo on a website or a logo on a printed piece or a poster that's gonna hang in offices and things like that. Those are worth, like a few dollars per impression. And other things that when you get an opportunity to potentially engage with someone face to face on site, the value of that increases significantly. And so you'd be looking at like $100 to $200 per impression that way. And so then what you do is kind of just look at the kind of the different assets and different opportunities that a sponsor has to engage with people. And whether that, again, like there's so many different kind of components. If you think about what I had mentioned earlier on, or even just in those primary drivers of ROI, you think of things like sampling, hospitality. Those are more valuable per impression elements. So you kind of give them a higher dollar amount. Co-creation of campaigns, or marketing messages would kind of be that middle tier. But then like PR, logo placement, and things like that would be at the lower tier where you'd have just different lower dollar amounts. And so if you look at kind of structuring it that way, where you have kind of like top tier, meaningful, high impact, those are more expensive. Those kind of medium impact, combination of maybe a little bit of in person, a little bit of digital, and then maybe probably more like I would say more traditionally formally digital components would be of lesser value. And across all those different assets, you just kind of like multiply the number of impressions that people would get, and will give you a rough dollar amount. And then you'd want to just add a little bit because you also should include some dollars for yourself from an evaluation perspective, so that you're also evaluating components of the sponsorship, both for yourself and for the fulfillment report. And you may want to have a few dollars assigned also for activations yourself. So especially if a sponsor has a big activation, or something that you feel like you could tell a story around, you want to be able to have some dollars that come from their sponsorship to allow you to do that as well.
Great. Okay, that was a great answer. Thank you. Very thorough. So that leaves us with a couple minutes. I don't see any other questions, but I want to say thank you again, Craig. It was really great to have you. I thought everyone was great in the chat. I loved your idea on the discovery. I think that's super essential and activation. So this is wonderful. What we'll do next, from our perspective, is wrap up and let everyone know when the videos are up online. They'll be posted to the Stephen Thomas YouTube channel, where you can find lots of webinars. And I would also encourage everyone to come to our register and come to our next two webinars. So we have two more webinars happening in the coming weeks. First is Alan Clayton, Great Fundraising Organizations. If you have not read Alan's book, and you want to be a great fundraising organization, go buy his book, or at the very least, come to our webinar. I'm going to put the link right now in our chat. That is on April 30th. It's really insightful based on research. Alan is huge in the UK and he knows the stuff. We also, Stephen Thomas is hosting a spring fundraise forward event. It's going to be a series of information sessions all in one afternoon on May 6th. So these are two things coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm just going to pop that one into the chat as well. I hope people can register or pass it along to your colleagues to register and to find out more. Even if it's a long event, you want to pop in for a session and send someone else to another session, that's totally fine. Both of these are free, and we love having them, and we love having you all here. So with that, I'll say thank you very much and hope everyone has a great afternoon. And thanks again, Craig.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.